Hi, good morning, it's Gene from the maverickstar Observatory. So, a couple of things in this video. Obviously we're going to have a look at North Skull at the Northern Hemisphere, probably the Southern Hemisphere and the equatorial region, to see how cold our planet's going. But I will say this, if you look at an artist's impression of a glacial period, what the Earth should look like during a glacial period, you'll see that where the cold regions are on our planet right now would match what it's starting to look like in the artist's impression of an Earth that is going into a glacial period. Just look at the amount of territory that sub-zero region is covering now over our northern hemisphere. Yes, okay, let's be fair and say, okay, well, it is winter in the northern hemisphere, and on our orbit around our sun, with the tilt, it puts us further away, and so the northern hemisphere of our planet should be colder. But you guys know as well as I do, if you're paying attention to myself and other channels on here, you will know that this is not just normal. You know, it doesn't usually come this far down over the African peninsula. You know, these temperatures are, sorry, that was Canada by the way, but Africa, there we go. Yeah, it doesn't usually come down this far, and some of these regions are seeing snow for the first time, and if not for the first time, it is breaking, you know, 100-year, 200-year records. So, you know, something different is happening. And what you got to pay attention to is, can you imagine how much agricultural land is beneath that sub-zero temperature region? That means until it starts to warm up, no crops go in the ground, and this is why our food productive lands are going out of out of production and offline, so to speak. So, and the other thing is that the majority of the people live over the northern hemisphere of our planet, and if it does go back into a glacial period, which it is destined to do, it is on the cards, it's not a matter of will it is a matter of when will it do it. When it does, there are 7 billion people on this planet that all need to be fed, and as a result of these temperatures for prolonged periods of time, and when we go back into glacial periods, we're talking over 50,000 years, so it will definitely last longer than our lifetimes if our planet slips back into that glacial period, as it is destined to do at this moment. The other thing is that when we do go back into a glacial period, guess what drops? You might not have guessed it, you might have. CO2 drops. And, you know, that will be a slap in the face for these other organisations. I ain't even going to mention them because you and I know who they are. These are the same organisations now that are being manipulated by politicians all over the world, and as a result of that manipulation, you know, these governments are stealth taxing every one of us on the back of global warming and rising CO2. It is a religion. If you just so hardly believe that CO2 is causing global warming, then, you know, you are part of this religion. You've been taken in by it. And what I mean by that is that you have got no evidence whatsoever other than what you have heard to be true, and you're believing it, and therefore you are sucked into this religion. It's nothing short of criminality what's going on, and, you know, this is the state at which we, you know, we participate in this world today. We accept the lies, or, you know, even if we don't agree with the lie, you know, and we just go along with it anyhow, because it's what can the majority of us do? If we don't get together and we don't fight back, then, you know, we've just got to suck it up. And, you know, it's not just CO2 lies. You know, there's a lot of other things going on right now, and more in particular, we're focusing on one of the major events that took place 780,000 years ago, and that's our magnetic reversal. It is coinciding at a time where we're also going through a GSM, and I mention this all the time in these videos, and some people say, oh, you keep going over the same old stuff and talking about the same old thing. I don't care what these people think, right? This channel and the website and all the work we've done, and you'll see what goes into building these particle detectors, is dedicated to what is taking place, because it is affecting our lives. It is going to affect every one of us in the short-term future, and if I am right and we go through a magnetic reversal in the next 3 to 7 years, then God help us all on this planet, because we're going to see what we saw in our history, only going back 80 years, come back in full volume, and we are going to have to witness some pretty frightening things. I'm talking about, your beloved neighbour next door. Oh, he's going to love you even more when he ain't ate no food for a couple of weeks and he knows you've got some. He's going to really love you. And if you ain't got food, he might even be just standing there on his doorstep licking his lips thinking, it's time to take a piece of that meat from the neighbour, from the neighbour's body, not fridge. I'm not joking about this, guys, and I'm not trying to put fear out there. I'm just telling you that these are the things that we've got coming. Now, guys, we're trying to expand this observatory, and we had 2,000 people view the video yesterday. And, I do my best. I'm not an editor, and, I don't script a lot of these videos. They just come straight off the bat. But the point is this, we raised £15 from 2 donations on PayPal yesterday, and you can't run an observatory at the speed of what we're trying to push this equipment out at on £15 a day. And it is a publicly funded observatory. And I know people moan at me from asking, but if we ain't got nothing in the pot, we can't send these magnetometers out, we can't send these muon detectors out, and we certainly can't afford to build them. So there is somebody here who is obviously got the time and the dedication and the skills to build these things. And it's not a simple thing. It isn't just a case of knowing how to solder a couple of surface mount components on a board. You have to have the skills to use things like drills, bandsaws, the capacity to program these things as well, source the materials. It's a lot for just one person, but we are getting there, guys. We've got quite a few magnetometers out, and muon detectors are being built now, and all I want to do is expand what we've got to get a better idea of what's going on. And if we can do that, it gives us a good heads up as to what we are looking at short term. So I'm not going to go on anymore. I'm going to say, before you watch the build video of just the silicon photomultiplier PCB, that there is a link down there. Don't just ignore it, guys. Please step forward and start participating in what we're doing. It's for you at the end of the day, and it's a worthwhile course. Trust me, you can throw your money away this day and age on a lot of rubbish, and there's a lot worse things that you can do than support an observatory that is monitoring closely one of the rarest anomalies that's taking place on our Earth. So, with that, enjoy the video of the build, and I'll be back tomorrow. As always, guys, bye for now. SIP on board, or the silicon photomultiplier, what you can see is I've already soldered on R13, R11 and R12 there. Those are just where are they? 49.9 ohm resistors, and then we've also got the capacitors on C11, C8, C9 and C12, I think it is there. And what we're going to do now is we're going to put the SIPMs on. This is the most expensive component on there, and there can't be no mistakes. And I just want to show you what they are. These are the silicon photomultipliers. And the way we work out, obviously it's got a direction on the SIPM, and on the silk screen there on the PCB board we can see there's a little mark for the direction of pin 1. Now you might just look at these and think all these edges are the same, and how do you determine which is pin 1? If I just zoom in on them, you'll see that most of the corners are the same apart from one, and the one which is pin 1 has, if I can just show you, pin 1 has an extra pin there. So we've got to be really careful with these because they've got a special coating on them, so we can't damage them, we can't overheat them, and we've got to make sure that when we solder these onto the PCB board that we get it in one hit. Remember, if you're buying these singly to have them shipped from the US, it's nearly over $100 each. And I've said it before, I don't know how MIT can claim that these particle detectors can be built for under $100 because it's impossible if, you know, the SIPM itself, you know, the silicon photomultiplier costs that in its in just that itself. So these are the SIPMs, and I'm going to solder this onto the board. I'll show you me doing that, and you know, that will be for the components on the SIPM PCB completed. We've got to put one of these 6-pin plugs on there, over here, and that goes onto these 6 footprints here. And then we've got to put the Cinculate crystal block on the top, and we've got to then use some coupling gel to bond the SIPM and the crystal Cinculate together. So, you know, we're using, guys, like I've said before, you know, we're using the state-of-the-art technology, same components. These components are the same as what NASA use, IceCube down in the Antarctic with their research facility, and, you know, all other facilities. And you know, if these are required on satellites, you know, this is the same component that they're using. You know, we're getting away with blue murder here, being able to build these, you know, here at our observatory, because otherwise, you know, the development of a particle detector would cost well out of our price range. We wouldn't be in a position to do it. So, okay, let's get it on the board then. So apologies for the creaky chair. So starting with the first PCB for the SIPM, we're just going to put a spot of solder on the corners of both of the PCB boards, and I'll tell you why that is in a second. And then we're going to get the SIPMs into position. The reason why we've done it this way is we're just going to hold the SIPM. We're going to try and align it up as best we can on the centre there, and then we're going to heat up the solder on the corner and allow the SIPM just to go down onto it, and that's it. Done. Not quite. Okay, we'll start again. Clean the pin off. A bit more solder. There we go. Make sure we've got pin 1 in the correct position. It's a bit fiddly, guys, but it's worth, you know, spending that little bit of time to get this absolutely spot on. So just a little bit of pressure when we heat the solder up, the SIPM goes down and it's on. There. Okay, yeah, there we go. There's our first SIPM attached to the board. All we've got to do, spot a solder on the other side to connect it to the PCB. There we go. That's done. So that's our first one done. Now we'll do our second one. Again, I just want to make sure, you know, we are using pin 1 on the SIPM and we're getting it on pin 1 on the board. And the other thing I'm trying to do here is just line it up, you know, nice and square on the board. And then again, a little bit of pressure, heat it up. SIPM goes down onto the board, and just a little alignment on that. Perfect. Again, another one. And then we just want to solder the other contact on the other side in the same manner. Okay. So that is probably one of 3 of the worst components to assemble onto the board. We have to make sure that they are assembled correctly, and that they have got contact. So the other thing I'm going to do just now is I'm going to check that with the microscope to make sure we've got contact on the pins correctly, and then we can put the singlet block on. The 6-pin legs are on. That enables it to go onto the larger PCB board, which we're going to populate next. You can just see on here where those 6 pins drop onto the board, and you can see that I've also soldered the standoffs on as opposed to screwing them down. And the reason why I do that is because when we start to screw the singlet onto the SIPM board, what's going to happen is if I put screws in there, which is over there, you're going to have a raised area on the singlet crystal. So I think it's better to solder them. That's why I've done that, and I've made sure that when it goes onto the board, it does align correctly as it should do. So there's the 2 pins where it will go, and as you can see, it's just going to land nice and safely on the area it's got to go, and they'll go down into the board. What you can see I've done here is I've held the SIPM board in the position where I want the singlet to go, and I'm just going to mark it slightly each corner with a couple of screws first on there. That's 1. 2. All I'm doing is I'm marking the actual singlet where I'm going to drill later for the screws to go in. And what we've got to be careful is when we start tightening up the screws onto the singlet is that we don't over tighten them and crack the SIPM, because it'd be an expensive mistake to make. Right, so all those holes are in the positions where we need them. Now we can take the blue tack off and the SIPM board, and then we can just go a little bit heavier into the actual crystal block to get a good mark on there, because we're going to use the electric drill to drill through them, because I found the last time I used this drill it actually heated up the plastic or the actual crystal and got stuck in there, and I nearly snapped the actual drill bit off. Whereas I found if I use the electric drill, it's got more power, and obviously it's going a lot faster than what this drill is, and as a result of that it doesn't stick in there and almost snap, because it would be very much a terrible mistake if we did get the drill bit stuck in there. I think we'd wreck the actual crystal singlet. So as you can see, I've got my 4 marks there now where I'm going to put the deeper drills into. So that's the 1, and that's the other one I done earlier. There you go. Now it's cleaned up the actual silicon photomultiplier screen on both of these. We've got the singlet drill holes now completed. They're all the way through, as you can see, and I've just run the thread up and down a few times on a little screw just to give it a bit of grip when we start to load the actual SIPMs in. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put a bit of silicon coupling compound on the SIPM, and what that helps do is give it a nice bond. When the singlet block goes on the top, it'll squeeze down onto the silicon compound and it will bond the actual singlet crystal to the SIPM, and then as far as that's concerned, that is that PCB board finished. We've got the SIPMs mounted. They're actually nice and clear. The coupling gel's on them, and all the screws are in on the back, nice and neat and tidy. That's the other one that we've got there, same thing. We haven't managed to crack any of the SIPMs as we've tightened them down. We want them nice and tight and flush on the actual crystal singlet block, and that's what we've achieved. You can see all the capacitors, the 6-pin plugs and the standoffs, and all the screws in the back there. So that's 2 SIPM boards, or silicon photomultiplier boards, completed. We're going to get on with now populating the main PCB board with all the other components. We're going to start off with the two most riskiest ones on this board, which will be this one here and this one there. I don't know if you can see it, just bring it into the light a bit better. So this one here and this one here, and they're both directional, as you can see with the screen print indicating the dot on the corner of each one of these where pin 1 is on the legs of these components. So once we've got these two components on, we're pretty much plain sailing from there. The rest is just resistors and surface mount capacitors, and you know, I'll show you how we're getting on with that perhaps in the next video.